for whatever political price the Democrats may have paid for caving, it sort of disappeared immediately because this week we got huge developments in this Epstein scandal, which is ongoing now. Wednesday, the newest member of Congress, Arizona's Adelita Grejalva, was sworn into office, ending 7 weeks of limbo after her special election victory. Her first official order of business was to sign a discharge petition, making her the 218th and final vote needed to force a floor vote compelling Trump's DOJ to release everything they know about Epstein. Earlier that same day, her new House Democratic colleagues released 3 previously unseen Epstein emails, which referenced Trump, including a 2011 message with co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell referring to the now president as, quote, the dog that hasn't barked, and alleging Trump had spent hours at Epstein's house with one of the victims. Furthermore, correspondences between Epstein and journalist Michael Wolff suggest Trump knew about the girls and had far deeper relationship with the convicted sex trafficker than he has previously acknowledged. The next day, the Republican-controlled House Oversight Committee then released a trove of more than 23,000 Epstein-related documents showing a wide variety of folks involved with the disgraced financier, including a counsel in Obama's office, including former President Clinton, including Deepak Chopra, Bill Gates. I think I saw the Dalai Lama in there somewhere. It just showing the depth of the elite folks in this country, complicity with this fellow. Folks were very comfortable in many of these emails. Larry Summers was in there. Again, this is well after he had first been convicted of sex offenses in Florida. And these folks were just very comfortable. It was like an inside joke with them, very concerning. We saw that Epstein was advising Russians on how to deal with Trump. There's for all of the information out there, there are more questions, I think, now than there were even before. And so in response to this, of course, where Trump is deeply implicated in all of these emails, he responds by directing his DOJ to investigate Epstein's relationships with Clinton and with all the other figures, particularly Democrats, who were named in these emails. So I want to open up the discussion. Let's see, Tabitha, let me come to you to start this one. What were your takeaways from all of these Epstein emails this week?
Okay, so I've got 3 little kids that have autism. The likelihood of someone that is under the age of 14 that has autism, irregardless if they are female or male, being sexually assaulted in some fashion is in the 90th percentile. Taking that into account, and the fact that I would consider myself a humanist, and I grew up in the Christian faith. The level of disgust that I have for this person and everyone that attaches themselves in some fashion to him, I don't even have the words for it. But basically, I just feel like nail all of their asses to the wall. And the type of America that I grew up in and the type of people that I grew up around, these strong farming people, a lot of people, help their community. There are things that transcend religion and your affiliation to political party. And the men that I grew up around that influenced me aren't doing this shit. And I think that we have an opportunity as a country. Like if we want to rally behind something, this is it. Just go through and find everybody, no matter how much money they have, and just nail their asses to the wall and make sure that this kind of shit doesn't ever happen again. And then when we fix it in this country, then start to go and help other countries with it. Because we know, we're all aware how big the problem is with human trafficking. And it's not as simple as color. A lot of these girls, a lot of people would consider them like the, American pageantry sort of personality. They're white, Caucasian, blue eyes, blonde hair. And, for those people that are a little racist still, and, look, I don't consider myself a racist, but for those people that are making excuses for this kind of shit, put your daughter, your cousin, your sister, your, kid across the street, put these kids in those places, and then look yourself in the mirror and have a natural reaction to these motherfuckers. I'm so sorry. Like, it disgusts me on a level that I consider myself a very nonviolent person. But if you're not having a guttural response to this kind of shit, like, you really need to look yourself in the mirror.
It's a really good point, Tabitha. And you mentioned, the men that you grew up around. If they would have caught wind of this shit, they'd kick somebody's ass. And that goes across party lines. That's just basic human decency. And it even goes to show, like, listen, we're talking about this discharge petition. There are at least 4 Republican women who have committed to signing on to this thing: Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace. And they had Boebert in the Situation Room this week, basically begging her not to sign on to this thing. And it turns out there may be more than 4. Word on the street, D, is that there are dozens, scores, maybe into the hundreds of Republicans who will sign on this thing if it reaches critical mass. I think they just don't want to be the one that gets out in front of it, right?
Right. There's political, and then there's personal. Personally, my friend Linda Lawson would say, F the patriarchy. This has been going on throughout history. These white,
exactly.
Adult men think they can do whatever the hell they want with whomever the hell they want. This piece just throws in rich people who then have the way to cover themselves and kind of have a little club about it all. But I know about 2 women in my old life that were not abused as children by somebody. It's just what has gone on. And I'm glad that it's out, because if we can take down these rich SOBs, then we can start to change, I hope, the culture that we have. But right now, it's the opposite. Right now, the culture says women get back in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant so we can do whatever the hell we want. Now, that's what I see going on politically. This is a chess game of 3-dimensional. They are working all the pieces that they can, every way that they can, to try and escape responsibility for it. They used the Republicans, being they, because I don't believe in cutting up Democrats unless it's absolutely necessary, okay? Because they're the ones doing it, so let's pick on them. They used the Epstein files throughout these elections to say, oh, these Democrats are the ones that are all in there. Look at it's Bill Clinton. Look at it's so and such and so and so. It's not us. And then when they got elected, and their people, their MAGAs, came to them and said, okay, now give us the Epstein files. Ruh-roh. Now what are we going to do? We actually got elected, and they actually care, and they care a lot. And so the Democrats masterfully have kept this on the front page. They don't want it to go away like everything else does because of whatever is the travesty of the day. There is, yes, a rumor that it may pass the House unanimously, because nobody wants to go on the record as being for child molesters.
Exactly.
Now they're arguing. Now Now they're arguing. You heard Megyn Kelly's piece this week?
Oh my God, that woman!
I was just
is
about to bring that
awful.
up.
I was gonna bring it up. I cannot believe. I mean, I
And
can believe her.
We've learned a new word. Why pedophilia only goes to people that are under 14. If you're over 14, it's, I don't know, hedgephilia, some word I never even heard before. Oh, really?
Yes. The
We're gonna
Republicans'
nuance
2026 platform is, well, actually, it's ephebophilia. Who's
Okay,
going to vote for that?
Right. I never even heard that word before. Who
She's
cares?
always, I don't know. She's always doing something stupid like that.
So politically, the reason I am fairly well convinced today, I may change tomorrow, but remember I have a lot of opinions. That I'm convinced today that the reason that Trump said, okay, well, let's go look at everybody but me, right, and the Epstein files, is to try and shut his base up, first of all. But secondly, their argument about, well, why didn't Biden come out and beat him up with the Epstein files? Well, first of all, we don't do that. Secondly, it's probably illegal. But most importantly, those records were under seal because they were using them to prosecute Ghislaine Maxwell. You couldn't pull them out because you couldn't do that. This action by him potentially puts those under seal so that they cannot come out, thereby giving the House that I'll vote unanimously. Yes, I'm all for it, but they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, about Ghislaine Maxwell, Jennifer, let me ask you about this. Did you see this one this week? So, apparently, remember when Todd Blanche, the number 2 guy at the DOJ, went down to Florida to visit her in prison a couple months ago, and after she gave this, very, very nice statement saying she never saw Donald Trump do anything untoward, they moved her to like this Club Fed style prison camp in Texas, where this week we learned she gets private meals, she gets a puppy, she gets yoga. Really nice setup, like, as Dee was saying, if you've got the resources, and as Tabitha is saying, if maybe you're internationally connected, as the Maxwell family were, maybe you can have nice things like this. And apparently, she's angling for a commutation. Trump even said he didn't rule it out. So what do you think, Jennifer?
I mean, I don't think anybody was surprised what was going on when, what's his name, went to talk with her. I mean, I think that is why Republicans are willing to have these reports come out about the Epstein, because what are you going to do? I mean, there's just so much out there. And, but before you started on her, I do want to say something about this, because I think it is important that we also recognize and thank Virginia Giuffre's family for also keeping this in the news. I mean, every single day they were out there, and, we need to always bring up her name when we're talking about this, because she gave up so much, her entire life. And then she took her own life, and she left us that book, which, came out shortly after she took her life. So, her family has worked very, very hard. I just can't imagine the pain that they go through every single day. Like, just as Democrats, we know what it's like to be fighting the good fight, knowing we're right, and fighting up against these people, and to have your daughter, your sister, your friend, as part of this. And I'm sure it's even more horrible than we think. I mean, being a young girl and dealing with, my brain is not working today. The lady in prison, I cannot think of her name. She's not even a lady. The monster in prison that we're talking about, she is just one of the worst ones, a woman. She really betrayed all of these women. It's even more than, sexual abuse in itself is damn awful. And it's also just the secondary part of that is being manipulated by somebody that it sounds like, they built relationships with her and trusted her. So I don't know. We don't know how any of this is going to play out. Absolutely no idea. I don't think he's going to be quick to do anything right now. I mean, everything doesn't really even lay on what she says anymore. I mean, she's been proven to be a liar consistently this whole time.
Yeah. Tabitha, I'm going to ask you to close out this section by asking you, is Trump ever going to face any consequences for this? Will he lose his presidency? Will he be forced to resign? Will he ever see the inside of a jail cell?
Well, to be completely honest with you, I don't even think Trump is at the reins anymore. And I think most people that have been paying attention really know that. You have people that are unelected acting representatives in our government, like Russell Vought, for example, who are just creating carnage everywhere they go. And then, everything bounces back to 2025. And it just seems like that playbook is just rolling out like it's supposed to. And what we should really be worried about is that the actors behind the screen, if you will, they've been at this for a very long time. They're very motivated to get the things done that they want done. And it seems like Trump's on his way out and they're grooming JD Vance now to take his place. And I think these type of individuals are the dangerous ones. The females that are taking up the mantle, that are painting a picture that is not true, that are trying to manipulate the American people's um, inner compassion for certain events. These are the really scary actors that we have. And couple that with all of these politicians that mum's the word. They are falling in line and they're not willing to break rank. And quite frankly, I think that's anti-American. And then for all of it, I'm agreeing with what Jennifer is saying. But considering that we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of this nation and that a British national infiltrated and manipulated and exploited and abused these young American girls who some of them came from very poor families. Some of them, got kicked out of their homes. We have people in the US right now living on the street, living in their cars that don't have food. And this SOB, I don't care how much money she came from. If you just think about that for a second, that these politicians are willing to sacrifice American children, white American children, for some foreign national that's a piece of shit. Like, I don't care, woman, man, trans, whatever. There are just things that are wrong. And if you can't now, of all the things going on, if you can't take a stance on this kind of shit, you're not a human being. Like, this transcends Republican, Democrat, or whatever. And that's why I just keep going back to this, because I'm from a really red part of the state and I've not given up on these people yet. And I really feel like there's a lot of areas of Indiana right now that they may not realize it, but they're like internally, the way that they operate and the way that they see their communities, those standards that they hold for one another, they are more democratic than anything. And
Mhm.
all of this stuff, I think at the end is going to blow up in these politicians' faces, because when people really start to sit down and have these serious conversations at their dinner tables and start to think of it like that, these Epstein survivors, they could have been kids at our schools that went to school with our children. They could have been our children. And that we have an obligation as Americans to stand up for these women. Think of how brave they were, how scary that must have been. All this horrible shit that happened to them when they were kids that they had to live through, the multi-generational effects that left them, that they were left holding the bag for these monsters. And now we're even entertaining a conversation about letting this monster out. I think the American people will hold them accountable, and it's not going to matter whether it's Trump or whoever, but these politicians better think about that, because I don't think this shit's going away.
There is, Tabitha, and you mentioned it in there, and I you so poignantly talked about these girls that had to go through these things, and the effects on their lives, and I don't want to minimize that, so I want to hold on to that for just a second, before we talk about politics of it again and turn to the